Good morning. It's Friday, June 19, 2015. This is your morning edition on I-24 News. Coming up later today, 2 hate crimes in churches on opposite sides of the Atlantic shock their respective communities. According to a UN report, the number of displaced people hits a record high of 60 million. And later on in the show, TV watchers have something to get excited about with the 2nd season of True Detective. Good morning, I'm Meredith Ross, and today we begin by looking at 2 crimes that unfolded yesterday in 2 churches, one in South Carolina and the other in northern Israel, both of which revealed the brutal extent that hatred can reach. We begin with the murder of 9 people in a black church in South Carolina. The following report has the latest details.
A fresh-faced accused killer. Dylan Roof hands behind his back a bulletproof vest just hours after his arrest. Silent as he's asked, why did he do it?
Dylan, what do you have to say?
Just 21 years old, friends say Roof's alleged plan was 6 months in the making. Today, this friend since childhood telling me Roof had a deep hatred of black people.
He wanted segregation.
What did he want to see happen? How was he going to do this?
I think he wanted something big like Trayvon Martin. He wanted to make something spark up the race war again.
In this photo, flag patches on Roof's jacket, one from apartheid-era South Africa, the other from the former Rhodesia, when it was ruled by a white minority, now called Zimbabwe. Joey Meek and his mom Kim saw Roof just Tuesday. They say he always had a gun with him. What kind of guns did he have?
45 Glock.
45 Glock? Did you carry it around?
In his car.
They called police when they saw him on TV this morning. This is a small town, a close-knit community. Neighbors say they saw Roof coming in and out of the country store all the time, but he never raised any suspicion. But earlier this year, his bizarre behavior leading to run-ins with police. In February, Roof, wearing all black, arrested at a mall after asking employees out of the ordinary questions. Accused of illegally possessing a prescription drug, Roof telling police his parents were pressuring him to get a job. Just 2 months later, Roof arrested again at that same mall for trespassing. But tonight, friends say they are shocked by this ending.
And joining me in studio, our Channel 2 Foreign Affairs editor, Rod Neer. Good morning, Rod. Thank you for being with us. And Rabbi Gilad Kariv, director of the Israel Movement for Reform and Progressive Judaism. Thank you for being here. And also our media correspondent, Ami Kaufman. Ami, thank you for being here. So we'll all chime in a moment. But first, we are joined via Skype from Fort Mills, South Carolina, by journalist Will Moordock to hear a bit more about the sentiment in the region this morning. Good morning, or rather good evening for you. Thank you for being with us. So how is the community in Charleston dealing with the attack the day after?
Well, there have been prayer vigils around the city today, and we've all been just tuned in to radios and televisions to get the latest report. A great deal of sadness, and I think a little anger too, but mostly sadness everywhere. And
is racial tension something that is felt in Charleston in general?
Well, yes, it's felt all over the country. I think we're handling it better than a lot of places, but I just wrote a column for the local paper here talking about the fact that we have in this city a long history of racial tension going back literally centuries. I mean, there was slavery here, and after slavery, the former slaves were abused and suppressed, and we've had civil rights campaigns here in recent decades. Yes, there's a lot of racial tension still here. We try to work through it as best we can, but then something like this happens to remind us of our sad history.
So going back to the attack, obviously we haven't heard yet from the shooter and what his motives were exactly, but one especially chilling detail from the event is that the shooter actually sat with the worshipers in a Bible study class for an hour before opening fire. I mean, what do you think was going through his mind? Do you think he was maybe having doubt?
I have no idea. It's just very strange behavior, and no, I would not speculate as to what was going through his mind. I mean, he's obviously, I think the very fact that you were talking earlier about his recent arrests and his strange behavior and dressing in black and this sort of thing tells me that he was a troubled young man, but I've also read reports that he had been making racist remarks to some people. So, I mean, there's a mixture of stuff going on in his head. And like too many people in this country, he had a gun, and it's just too easy to get a gun in this country, as the president said. And crazy people like this Dylan Roof can get a gun with little trouble and little money and commit mayhem and take many lives.
Right, it's certainly a grave issue. Well, Will Murdoch, thank you very much for joining us from South Carolina. And coming back now to Studio Rod, so Will just mentioned the issue of gun control, and this is an issue that has been recurring over and over with mass shootings. In fact, President Obama has addressed it at least 14 times during his presidency with so many shootings. I mean, how many shootings will it take to enforce proper gun control in the U.S.?
Unfortunately, I can't answer this question, Meredith, and this is the main issue. There are many lunatics around all over the world. The point is that in the United States currently, a loony can go into a shop and buy himself a gun, machine gun, whatever he likes. He can learn to function it in no time with no disturbance and then take as many lives as he manages. This guy was traced, he was known to police, he was known to his environment, and he still had a gun. On the other hand, you started this program this morning talking about two parts of the Atlantic. On our part of the Atlantic, with more stricter gun control, people could do as terrible harm as they did next to the Sea of Galilee in the church here without using a gun. They didn't take lives, fortunately, but still this sense of hatred has to be addressed somehow by leaders. I think that President Obama tries to do it, and still he faces this wall of gun control from his opponents in the political scene. In Israel, I think the authorities do not do enough to trace these people in advance before they do this terrible harm.
So we'll get to this in a moment. I think that's a perfect segue to the next issue. So while events were unfolding in the U.S., here in Israel, the search is still on for people behind the arson and defacing of the Church of the Multiplication at Jaffa in the Sea of Galilee. Though no one was seriously injured in the incident, the attack on an important religious institution is being treated with the utmost urgency. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has urged the head of the Shin Bet Internal Security Agency to invest all efforts towards bringing the suspected arsons to justice, the deed sparking condemnations from across the political spectrum. Let's watch the following report, and then we'll take it from there.
An arson attack that could have turned deadly occurred overnight at one of the holiest sites in Christianity. The Church of the Multiplication of the Loaves and the Fishes was set afire, with 2 of the 12 present at the time suffering from smoke inhalation, a 19-year-old female tourist and a 79-year-old man.
Early in this morning, I think 3:15, I heard it a big, loudly tone, and I ran out from my room, and I saw the main entrance from the monastery was burned, and I smelled it is benzene.
Serious damage was caused at the site by the fire, with hundreds of books set ablaze along with pieces of furniture. Firefighters who rushed to the scene worked for 3 hours to put out the blaze, which nearly reached the chapel itself. The Church of the Multiplication is located on the northwestern shore of the Sea of Galilee in Israel, and is, according to Christian tradition, the site where Jesus miraculously fed 5,000 people with 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. The arsonist desecrated one of the church walls by writing a phrase from a Hebrew prayer calling on false idols to be rooted out, suggesting this was another case of Jewish zealots targeting Christian holy sites with vandalism.
It is very sad also that we are talking now practically about a phenomenon, because we are talking about tens of incidents of attacks on holy places, not only of Christians, that took place in recent years.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu directed the head of the Shin Bet Internal Security Service to conduct a rapid investigation into the matter, calling the incident an attack on Israeli society as a whole. 16 Jewish youths were detained during early morning prayers near the northern city of Tiberias and underwent interrogation before being released in the afternoon. An attorney representing the group wrote a letter to police insinuating his clients were wrongly detained because of their religious background. It remains unclear at this stage who is responsible for the damage.
And joining us now on the phone for an update is Israeli police spokesman Mickey Rosenfeld. Good morning, Mickey, and thank you for being with us. So what are the latest developments in the investigation?
Well, the investigation is continuing, obviously being carried out by Judea and Samaria Department. Our emphasis is to try and find those suspects and continue to get to those suspects who carried out that attack. We're taking that incident and the attack on the highest of levels in terms of priorities. There were 16 people that were questioned yesterday, but as a result, there was no connection between them and the incident itself. All of our units are focused at this moment in time on the investigation.
Well, Mickey Rosenfeld, thank you very much for joining us with these updates. And coming back now to studio, Rabbi Kareev, thank you very much for being here, first of all. But as we heard in the report, this is a phenomenon that's going on against religious sites, both Muslim and Christian. But what was so particularly heinous about this act is that people are living on the premises and the significance it has in Christianity.
Yes, first of all, we need to mention that this is not the first time that life are at risk. Only 3 months ago, an Orthodox seminary, a Greek Orthodox seminary on Mount Zion in Jerusalem was violated with a fire while 80 young students were in the building. And I'm saying it because it is time for all of us to understand that this is not only, an attack on religious sites. Unless the Israeli authorities do something seriously about it, we will find ourselves in the same situation of the American nation. And I know that right now it's hard to compare between the two events. 9 people were killed in Charleston, and thank God no one was killed in this event. But we might find ourselves on a specific morning dealing with a catastrophe. And as was mentioned by your report, 43 holy sites for Muslims and Christians were violated in the last 3 years in Israel. No one was charged. And the police, the Israeli police, and this is something that we should have asked the spokesperson of the police, the Israeli police and the other security authorities didn't succeed to bring one person to the courts. And this is bad news. If the excellent security authorities of Israel don't find the way to address this issue, what will happen when they decide to move to the next stage? Because we need to understand that the entire concept of hate crimes is to drag the attention of the general public. They are starting with violating holy places, but after 50 times or 100 times, they will move to the next stage, and they will try to hurt people. The second disturbing thing is the fact that our government doesn't have a clear policy against racism. Yesterday, the 2 chief rabbis of Israel condemned the attack on the church, and I trust their honesty. But at the same time, those 2 chief rabbis welcome the municipal rabbi of the city of Tzfat, 30 kilometers from this church. They are welcoming this person to the General Council of the Chief Rabbinate of the State of Israel, while this person is occupied with racist incitement. This person was charged with criminal charges for inciting for racism. So you can't have a dual standard. If you want to fight racism, you can't give a support, even if it is a quiet support, to institutions and to rabbis that are busy with a racist incitement. And unfortunately, this is the case today in Israel.
But there was wall-to-wall condemnation of the issue, but is that perhaps due to pressure because this is such a significant site in Christianity? How come this church, this issue has become...
Well, there's lots of lip service, no doubt. Everybody condemns and uses the proper words, but we need some deeds to be proved. As was mentioned here, so many events were not solved. If we compared, this morning we compare what happened here to what happened in the United States. Well, it took the American police few hours to find the perpetrator, the murderer, and to arrest him. Okay, things are different here. Israel is a much bigger country than the United States, and things are much much more complicated in here. I believe that the security services know where to approach the perpetrators, how to reach them, but I'm afraid that there's not enough effort being put in this. The vast majority of resources are being invested in other places, and it's quite good. You know, I don't attack this decision, but we have to convey resources to stop this movement, to stop this these deeds, because this can lead into a much greater catastrophe. I think that the response by the religious authorities to this last hate attack was very responsible. We don't see incitement. We don't, you know, it's well contained, but it won't last for long.
And as Rabbi Kareev said, people will end up getting hurt if this continues. They're going to...
No doubt.
Yeah.
No doubt.
The journalist you spoke with from through Skype from Charleston mentioned that this person is probably a lunatic. But we need to understand that it has to do with the general environment. Always it's the act of an individual. And many times when you look at those young people that are doing those horrific acts, yes, they are troubled young people. But we need to take responsibility for the environment that allows those troubled young people to do what they are doing. And we have a problem and we have a challenge with the general environment in Israel. We are not investing enough in order to cultivate coexistence. We are not cultivating religious tolerance in Israel.
Let alone coexistence, respect the other.
Yes, yes. Inside, you know, inside the Jewish community and between the Jewish community and the other religious communities in Israel. And it's not enough to condemn the attack. It is the responsibility of the religious leaders, it is the responsibility of educational leaders, and it's the responsibility of the government to set the right policies that will change the atmosphere, that will change the environment. We are not there yet. We are not doing the first necessary steps in order to design this atmosphere of tolerance in the Israelis.
I think on the contrary, the policies are much more intrinsic. We don't teach our kids, our youth, to look around, to respect the other, to respect who is different to them, and then we pay the price.
Well, you can argue that the U.S. Does do that, and then you have these mass shootings, and then people are clearly not listening to these messages. But I want to bring in Ami to the conversation, because before the show, you brought up a really interesting point. What is the difference between these hate crimes and terrorism?
Well, there's a good debate going on in the States now. We heard the word here about the calling the person a lunatic already. It's interesting that when there's a white person that shoots African Americans, they're immediately looking at him as what his motives are. He might have been insane. He might have not been what's wrong with him. But if we compare him to stuff that's already happening, you know, we look at the Boston Marathon bombing, where we had two brothers who were Muslims, the Tsarnaev brothers. They used 2 bombs. They killed 3 people, and they were immediately called terrorists. There was no doubt about it. But here we have a man, one gun, who killed 9 people. Not even called a terrorist yet. He's already called a hate crime, and there's a lot of calls from African Americans to say, hey, let's get this thing straight. This guy's a terrorist. This guy's a racist. He had a problem with African Americans. It was premeditated. He went there to kill African Americans. He had a problem with them. This is terrorism. Yeah,
he even said himself, while he was shooting people, I'm here to kill black people.
Right, right. And you know what's interesting? Even Abe Foxman, the director of the Anti-Defamation League, agrees. This should be called terrorism. He says, while the terrorist label is often applied to attacks, plots, and conspiracies carried out on behalf of designated terrorist organizations such as ISIS and Al-Qaeda, politically motivated violence is not the sole domain of supporters of designated terrorist groups. So this is a very interesting debate, and I hope that, personally, I hope that this guy will not be called immediately a lunatic, like people are just, you know, this guy's a terrorist.
He's a lunatic, but he's a terrorist.
A lunatic, and it's a very sad time for the U.S. and for Charleston in particular. Thank you all very much for being here. Arad, stay put. We will be speaking with you, but Rabbi Kareev and Ami, we will see you later in the show, Ami. But thank you very much for being here. And And moving on to our next topic, the UN's Refugee Agency issued a report yesterday placing the number of displaced people around the world at nearly 60 million, a record high. The UNHCR Global Trends Report warned that with raging conflicts in places like Syria, Afghanistan, and Somalia, the situation is likely to deteriorate further. The following report has the details.
From Syria to Ukraine, through Myanmar to Burundi, these ongoing violent conflicts with no solution in sight have raised the number of worldwide refugees to an all-time record of almost 60 million people, half of them children.
The world has lost much of its capacity to prevent conflicts and to timely solve them, and the result is the dramatic situation we are presenting today. And dramatic not only because there are more and more refugees and displaced persons, but because there are less and less solutions for them.
According to an alarming report by the UN Refugee Agency, published Thursday, and dealing with 2014, a shocking average of 42,500 people became refugees, asylum seekers, or are internally displaced every day, representing a fourfold increase in just 4 years. The bloody civil war in Syria received a dishonorable first place, with 7.6 million displaced people and almost 4 million refugees, who mainly fled to neighboring Lebanon, Jordan, and Turkey. It was the first time the number of Syrian refugees has overtaken the number of Afghan refugees. Yet Syria and Afghanistan are far from the only conflicts which forced people to flee. At least 14 conflicts have erupted or resumed throughout the world in the last 5 years: Ukraine, South Sudan, Nigeria, Central African Republic, and the Democratic Republic of Congo. And they are the conflicts which are increasing the figures. The numbers also show that the Ukraine conflict pushed the number of refugees in Russia to 231,800 people by the year's end, up from 3,400 only 12 months earlier. But what is maybe even more disturbing is the fact that while many conflicts have erupted or reignited in the past 5 years, only a few have been conclusively resolved. Only 126,800 refugees were able to return home in 2014. This is the lowest number in 31 years.
Unfortunately, the number of situations in which a solution is found is close to zero.
This Saturday, June 20th, is the UNHCR's World Refugee Day. Hopefully, by this time next year, the numbers will be different in the positive sense of the word.
And we're joined now on Skype from Geneva by UNHCR spokesman Adrian Edwards. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Oh, pleasure.
So a really upsetting fact that I found is that more than half of these 59 million refugees are children.
Yeah, these are really alarming statistics you've seen in this report at every single level. They paint a picture of a situation that's really out of control. Not only are more than half children, but the numbers of refugees of internally displaced is increasing at a phenomenal rate, 16% more than a year ago, 60% more than a decade ago. Every single day, you've got enough new displaced people to fill an entire football stadium. So absolutely huge numbers. And sadly, this points to what lies behind it, the very high rate of global conflict that's the cause.
Mm-hmm. And, you know, obviously in the report, we saw that it's expected that these numbers will just continue to rise.
Sadly, that's the case at the moment. All the trends are pointing upwards. And it's for this reason that we're making the case that a much stronger international response, a response on a level that really hasn't been considered to date, has to be looked at now. There isn't enough funding for all these displaced people. Only about half the people in the world who become refugees get proper or have funding for them. You've also got the huge problem of inadequate efforts at the international level to deal with the root causes, the conflict. So this whole issue has to be pushed much further up the international agenda if we're going to see any chance of these numbers coming down from these absolutely stratospheric levels where they are now.
Right, and obviously it's just very depressing, this entire report. But is there anything positive? Are there any models, perhaps, of Turkey, countries who have been relatively successful in dealing with the crisis?
There are indeed. Almost 9 out of 10 of the world's refugees are actually being hosted by countries that are less wealthy, host communities that are offering extraordinary generosity to these people. That's happening. but it has to be maintained worldwide now. We're in this period of record forced displacement, and it really needs all countries to work on this, because the reactions we see in some places, which has moved towards closing doors, towards xenophobia, really isn't the answer for this kind of crisis.
Right. And you know, Adrian, what percentage of these refugees would you estimate will never return to their homes?
Well, the tragedy is that more and more of these people are living for years, literally decades in many cases, on the periphery of society, very poor, in conditions which none of us would really want to live in, until solutions are found for them. Last year, only 120,000 or so people actually managed to have solutions to their plights as refugees. So this is another, unfortunately, tragic aspect to this, that people are spending many years as refugees. It's becoming an increasing risk for all of us. One in every 122 humans worldwide is now in this situation, and that proportion is growing. We have to do something about it. We have to have answers that are proportionate to the scale of this immense problem.
Absolutely, and as we mentioned at the beginning of our conversation, children, some are being raised, and this is all they know is the life of a refugee, which is unacceptable. No child deserves that. Well, Adrian Edward, thank you very much for joining us today.
My pleasure.
And coming back now to studio, Arad, it's a very upsetting report. But will this encourage any change? When these reports come out again and again, what can the international community do?
Well, I think that the only thing that we can expect the international community to do now is to help the countries who host the refugees, who give them refuge. And, you know, it's quite disturbing that the epicenter of the recent refugee phenomenon is very close to us here in Israel. It's
right next door.
Quite next door, Syria and Iraq. And the country on the top of the list of hosting the refugees is Turkey, as you mentioned before. And it is no coincidence that the press conference yesterday was made by the High Commissioner for Refugees in Turkey, because Turkey is really, it's not the richest country around, but it is the country that at the moment, in 2015 figures, hosts nearly 2 million refugees, mainly fleeing in from Syria.
Right, but when you just think about these numbers, something like 42,000 new refugees a day around the world, it's just, it's also an impossible figure. Thank you very much, Arad, for joining us this morning. And coming up next, we look at the new season of True Detective and other cultural news. But first, let's hear some more of this morning's headlines. Welcome back to the morning edition here on I-24 News. Let's say hi again to Ami Kaufman, who joins us daily to discuss the news we've missed while scanning the headlines or the ones deemed worthy to print.
Good morning, Meredith.
Good morning. Good. We had a very serious conversation earlier.
We did. It was a really good conversation. Yeah. Glad we had that one. We're going to start with Israel here. Yesterday we learned about Michael Oren's op-ed that was in the Wall Street Journal that made a lot of waves, where he claimed that President Obama abandoned Israel deliberately. This got a lot of people angry in the American government, and Dan Shapiro, the ambassador here in Israel, asked for some apologies. First, he asked from Moshe Kahlon, the leader of the Kulanu party, which Michael Oren belongs to, and Moshe Kahlon immediately said, "No problem, I'll write that apology quite quickly," and he did. He also brought Michael Oren for a conversation to talk to him and reprimand him personally.
Slapping of the wrist.
Yeah, but as things couldn't get any worse, Netanyahu refused this request, as we learned from this Haaretz headline. He said that he will not disavow from the comments that Michael Oren made, because it's, he's not from his party, so doesn't really have any responsibility for it. Right. He said he might have some kind of comments later on. Didn't say no time frame whatsoever, but he might talk about it later.
Okay, well, we know that relations are relatively sour, especially between Netanyahu and Obama.
Oh, you're being so polite. Relatively
sour. We have to be diplomatic in the news.
Very true. Okay, the next item, we're going to do, like I sometimes do, this little media comparison. I don't know if you've noticed, but here we're going to talk about Hong Kong and China. Hong Kong rejected a proposal yesterday to change the way it votes for its leaders. It was a proposal, though, that came from the top, from Beijing, Beijing. Beijing gives them a list of 3 people they can choose from. But this proposal was rejected by the legislative body in Hong Kong because they were saying it wasn't democratic enough. And as we see here from the Time document, the Time item that we have, if we can put up the headline, it says Hong Kong lawmakers reject the electoral reform proposal backed by Beijing. Pretty much what you would expect from a Western media that's covering the item, and how this is really a slap in the face for Beijing. But if we move to the region itself, and we have the South China Morning Post. South China Morning Post is considered a kind of fairly liberal newspaper, but it has actually sacked some pundits that used to write for it because they wrote some things that were anti-Beijing. Right. And their headline here for this story is, "It is not what we like to see. China's government reacts to Hong Kong's rejection of political reform plans." So it seems like the newspaper in Hong Kong is kind of towing the line of Beijing, showing how Beijing is really disapproving of this development. And if we finish, I want to show you this. I hope we have this item from Xinhua, the official Chinese news agency. This is all they have. Look at this. It's a one-liner. This is probably the most important event between Hong Kong and China in years. And this is how the official agency, Chinese agency, responds to the event. It's a one-liner. It says, Chinese top legislature on Thursday said its decision on the reforms last August will remain in force in the future, despite Hong Kong Legislative Council's veto of the universal suffrage motion. That is all that Xinhua is writing.
Wow.
Sometimes, I think, when people get mad, they kind of just contain themselves and they don't want to talk a lot.
It's like a passive-aggressive kind of a thing.
Exactly, passive-aggressive. That's what I feel when I read that Xinhua. Passive-aggressiveness right there.
Sometimes those who say the least say the most.
Very true. Yeah. Good point. Good point.
That could be the tactic there.
And now going back to the States, Donald Trump, the gift, the gift that keeps on giving.
Yes.
I mean, the media just cannot get enough of his announcement that he's running for president.
Yeah, I love that screenshot, by the way.
Yeah, look at I chose that one. Yeah. And we have a video of him that he gave to ABC about one of his possible running mates. Let's take a look at what he has to say.
Okay.
In 1999, when you were thinking of running as the Reform Party candidate, you told Larry King that you'd consider Oprah for vice president.
I like Oprah. What can I tell you?
Still on your short list?
Oh, she's great. She's talented. She's a friend of mine. She's a good person. I've been on her show. In fact, I was on her show last week. She said, could I be on her show with the whole family? I like Oprah. I mean, is that supposed to be a bad thing? I don't think so.
So when you think about
Oprah.
who the kind of people you're going to run with?
I think Oprah would be great. I'd love to have Oprah. I think would win easily, actually.
Win easily with Oprah.
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's actually true.
You think it would work?
I mean, that would actually work. That's the only thing that will for sure work.
Yeah, that'll push him through.
Sarah Palin, I don't know, but Oprah, yes.
Oprah could work, right?
For sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know. I don't think Oprah's going to go for it. But,
no, don't think so. Don't think so. But it was interesting how he really went on the defensive there, didn't he? It was like he was being attacked for this question.
Well, he's being attacked from everywhere. He's even being attacked, by the way. We don't have this item, but he's being attacked by Neil Young for using one of his songs, "Rock the Free World," I think it's called. Rockin' the Free World, for his campaign announcement. And Neil Young actually put out a statement that said Donald Trump was not authorized to use "Rockin' in the Free World" in his presidential candidacy announcement. Neil Young, a Canadian citizen, is a supporter of Bernie Sanders for president of the United States of America.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Way to deliver a punch.
I know.
Yeah. But according to Trump's campaign manager, it was all legal and they paid the checks to the relevant people.
But then they're saying that an artist can later on sue a candidate for using their music. So like they got the rights for the song, but they didn't get his permission to use it for political agenda.
That's kind of embarrassing. This is Ronnie Staub, by the way.
Hello.
Why Not America's journalist.
I just decided to start giving inputs.
We love that you're chiming in just so our audience knows who you are. Thanks for that. So crazy, yeah. Trump is coming under a lot of fire, but I think he likes it that way.
Well, I love it. I want him to give more. I just don't want it to stop.
Yeah. What's next?
Next, we have amazing news still coming from the States. There will be a woman's face on the $10 bill. This hasn't happened on a bill in like 160 years, they say, or something like that.
Oh wow.
Now, what's interesting, but Andrew Jackson is right now. He's currently on the bill, and people thought that she was going. Whoever this is, they haven't decided. That she was going to replace Andrew Jackson, but it turns out no. Somehow they're going to have both figures on the bill, and nobody knows how this is going to happen.
Are they going to blend their faces with technology that you can see what your baby looks like?
But this is such an apparently exciting thing that the Treasury Secretary himself, Lou, said, I want to announce this myself, and we have the video of him announcing that this is happening.
Right now, the $10 bill is undergoing a redesign, and I'm proud to announce today that the new $10 bill will be the first bill in more than a century to feature the portrait of a woman.
He just can't contain his excitement.
I know. Talk about a lackluster. I mean, I don't know. That was a downer for me.
He is excited.
Yeah, I think he's just a little camera shy.
I don't know. So people are disappointed that they're going to be together. So
that's what I was going to say. You finally give it to a woman and you make her share it with a guy.
I know. It's just wrong. I'm sorry. It's just wrong.
True. It is wrong. And I think that woman should be Oprah. So that's just me.
And if we have, do we have time for one last quick one?
I think we do.
We do? Okay. This is from The Independent. Boris Johnson, who's also one of my favorite politicians, he's very colorful, was caught on camera telling a London cabbie to F-word off.
Oh.
There's this whole thing in London where...
And die.
And die. Well, actually, the exact quote. Well, this cabbie told him, he's giving too much support for Uber drivers, which are really kind of stealing their income from regular black cab taxis. And this guy who saw him riding on his bike told that to him. And Boris Johnson says, "Why don't you F-word off and die? Why don't you F-word off and die, and not in that order?"
Okay.
Oh.
I had the video, but I didn't want to really. It was a bit too much, I think, for the morning.
I think he just caught him on a bad day.
Yeah.
A very bad day.
Those politicians, or attempted politicians in Trump's case, and their hair.
Yeah. Well, this guy, he could be the next Prime Minister of England. He's a very popular Tory politician.
He's pretty well liked. I actually saw him riding his bike once around in London when I was studying there. It was quite an experience seeing that blonde hair blowing in the wind. Yeah, he's an interesting guy.
Some people say he might be the replacement for David Cameron.
Could be. Well, Ami Kaufman, thank you very much for being here. So again, moving now to Ronnie for the culture news. What do you have for us?
I'm pretty excited about the news today. Like every segment, I was like, yes, this is happening and this is happening. So pretty exciting news today in my section.
Excited.
There you go. So the first thing, Miley Cyrus and Caitlyn Jenner, that sounds like a match made in heaven.
Absolutely.
Obviously. And I was not a big fan of Miley. And then yesterday, on Tuesday, she gave a speech on the AMFRA's Inspiration Gala. AMFRA is the American Foundation for AIDS Research. And I got excited about Miley Cyrus for the first time in my life. And in the event, there was an auction when she presented 4 paintings of Caitlyn Jenner's photo in Vanity Fair when she beaded it with a lot of little shiny things. And the auction went up to $65,000. She wanted to make a little bit more money, and then she offered things like cleaning the house of whoever will bid for it naked and showing them her unmatched boobs and being Miley Cyrus, basically. But I mean, later on, she gave this beautiful speech saying there are so many people around the world right now that deserves this recognition, and they've dedicated their lives to finding a cure. And by receiving this award tonight, I promise to continue to fight along with such an industrious army for a cure for this epidemic.
Wow.
Now, she got it for her work for the LGBTQ community, and also for her foundation, Happy Hippie, that is basically a nonprofit foundation that its mission is to rally young people to fight injustice facing homeless youth, LGBTQ youth, and other vulnerable populations. And she's been doing a lot that area.
It's really nice to see her in this light, and especially in such a mature light, and having a real purpose.
Absolutely,
besides,
absolutely. No, she's not. Yeah, absolutely. I got super excited about her. Absolutely.
That's great.
Good
Go
job,
Miley.
Good job, Miley. Good job, Miley. There you go. True Detective. Another very exciting moment. I loved True Detective. It was. I mean, it's one of the best things that has ever happened to
My ringtone
TV.
Was the intro to that for like a year.
You know you're a fan when.
That's right. Good point.
There you go. So the first episode of season 2 is about to start June 21st. And they have been talking about it for a really long time. It's not going to be the same story. It's not going to be the same characters. It's going to be completely different, but in the same vibe of whatever has happened in the first season, whatever that means. Nick Pizzolatto, the creator of the show, is starting to give a little bit hints. As for season 2, there started being reviews. Some people are more excited, some people are less excited. I'm super excited about it. Everyone was saying that, how are you going to top the cast of the former season?
Right.
But
they are.
Sorry?
They are.
They are, absolutely. They have Colin Farrell, they have Rachel McAdams, they have Taylor Kitsch, and they have Vince Vaughn as the villain.
So we have a trailer of that, don't we?
I love Vince Vaughn.
Sometimes your worst self is your best self.
My strong suspicion is we get the world we deserve.
This isn't me doing this. This isn't me.
So what really strikes me there is it's amazing that it's a television trailer, because you would think with all these big stars it's a movie.
Yeah.
I mean, they're really making the shift
but you know,
now
like
to
HBO's
television.
but HBO's TV series has always been something that is right in between a way the TV series is looking and a movie.
Right, so TV is really like where it's at now for actors, and
Yeah,
this is the new genre.
It's where the quality content is going to as well. I mean, the real big stars want to be in the big TV shows. It's not really that much about cinema anymore.
Exactly, and also they're recurrent. People binge watch now. I mean, people are consuming it in a completely different ways. So they're
which is part of the reason that so many stars are trying to shift into television now.
Yeah. Very cool.
It's not a bad word to say that you're in a TV series anymore.
It used to be, didn't it?
Yeah, it used to be like, oh yeah, that TV series thing.
Yeah,
and
I'm
now
in a film now.
Completely different. Two more things about True Detective that is super interesting. So the last time it was Louisiana, and it was such an integral part of the story, the fact that it's in Louisiana and the landscape, and you know, it gave so many clues as for the story. This time it's happening in Los Angeles, California, in a little city called Vinci. That is actually the real city that it's based on is Vernon. It's a little city with a lot of pollution and tons of roads, and they're talking about the fact that last time the circles was the theme and part of the clues of what's going on in the series. This time it's all the rows and all the lines that are being.
So they're already giving out hints about
they're
how
already
to
giving hints.
Solve it.
Yeah, and they're already saying like, look into what has happened in Vernon years ago, and you're gonna get more clues. Just
That's
like
very cool.
Yeah,
that's
just
what
like,
fans love now.
Yeah, just like in season 1, when they were saying check
Yeah.
out Louisiana. I think they were saying check out Louisiana 2005, if I'm not mistaken. And
well, lots to
I'm
look forward to
excited.
for True Detective. So I think we have time for one more.
Okay, one more. The Secret Lives of Pets, even more exciting. Let's take a look.
That is just genius.
I mean, the team of Despicable Me and Louis C.K. teaming up together is the best thing that is happening. We will have to wait for another summer until it will go out. It will come out on June 8th of 2016.
Oh,
yeah,
that's
a long
little bit
time.
more time. I know,
That's
but it's
neat of
okay.
them.
Just watch the trailer a couple more times.
It's my wedding anniversary.
Oh,
there you go.
That's a great date, I think, for a movie to come out.
Oh, yeah. Then you don't have to deal with the planning. No, I'm kidding.
I know what we're going to do next year. Fantastic.
We're going to watch Louis C.K. being a dog.
Oh, my God.
Romantic.
That trailer was so cute. I mean, it really
Absolutely.
captures like every possible scenario you could picture your pet in.
Yes.
Absolutely. And I mean, Louis C.K., come on. Like, how wonderful that is.
That is hysterical.
Yeah, and I mean, a couple more people are there as well, like Kevin Hart and Ellie Kemper and Lake Bell and Eric Stonestreet and so many more. But I mean, I'm just excited about Louis C.K.
Really looking for. Oh, and it's a pug. I have two. So, you know, that's
There you go.
adorable. This is
There you
hilarious. Can't wait for that. Well, Ronnie, thank you so much for being here this morning.
Thank
It's
you.
been really fun. You as well.
Thank you very much.
And good luck on that anniversary next year. Coming up next, we leave you with the best of this week's morning edition, including a look at Israel's tattooing scene with our reporter Ami Kling, who got inked just for you, and an exploration into the Sodom Salt Caves with part 1 of our series, Underground Israel. But first, let's hear some more of this morning's headlines. Have a great weekend.